October 4th, 1943, RAF Haleworth. Colonel Hubert Zemke watched 52 Republic P-47 Thunderbolts preparing for a deep bomber escort mission into Germany. At 29, with only 6 months of combat and 4 confirmed kills, Zemke knew the odds. The Luftwaffe planned to send 180 Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt 109s to defend their industrial targets. Every American pilot knew the physics. The P-47 weighed 7 tons empty, while the German Focke-Wulf 190 was less than 4. In a turning dogfight, the lighter fighter always won, and the heavier fighter died. Zemke's 56th Fighter Group had suffered heavy losses, 11 aircraft lost in their first 4 months. German pilots called the P-47 the Jug, a flying tank that couldn't dogfight. The truth was undeniable. The Focke-Wulf 190 could complete a 360-degree turn 6 seconds faster than a Thunderbolt at 15,000 feet. 6 seconds in combat meant death. The 8th Air Force was already planning to replace the P-47 with the lighter, faster P-51 Mustang, viewing the Thunderbolt program as a failed experiment. But Zemke, having spent 2 years testing the P-47 before the war, knew a secret the Germans didn't. The Thunderbolt couldn't turn, but it could dive. Its massive 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, thick wing and heavy airframe remained stable at speeds that would tear apart a Focke-Wulf. In a vertical dive, nothing in the Luftwaffe could catch a Thunderbolt. Zemke stopped fighting the war the Germans expected and developed new tactics based on the P-47's true strengths: height advantage, diving attacks, hit and run, never turn with the enemy, and zoom back to altitude. His pilots spent the summer of 1943 practicing these maneuvers, learning to trade height for speed and speed for position, never getting slow and never trying to turn. By September, the 56th was ready, even as 8th Air Force bomber losses accelerated. The October 4th mission would be their first full combat test. The bomber stream was scheduled to fly at 22,000 feet, but Zemke positioned his Thunderbolts at 30,000 feet, 8,000 feet of potential energy ready to convert into diving speed. German radar tracked the American formation, and Luftwaffe controllers scrambled 73 Focke-Wulf 190s to intercept, expecting American fighters to be flying tight alongside the B-17s. Instead, the 56th Fighter Group was hunting 8,000 feet above the bombers. At 0952, Zemke spotted the German formation assembling at 18,000 feet, preparing for a standard dive attack on the bombers. Zemke rolled his P-47 into a 70-degree dive, followed by 51 other Thunderbolts. 7 tons of aircraft accelerated toward terminal velocity, engine roaring, as airspeeds climbed past 400 miles per hour. The German fighters focused on the bombers below, never looked up. Zemke's first burst of .5 caliber fire ripped through a Focke-Wulf cockpit at 450 miles per hour. The subsequent 90 seconds were chaos. The 51 remaining Thunderbolts dove through the German formation at speeds the Focke-Wulfs couldn't match. With each P-47 carrying 8 Browning M2 machine guns, the group unleashed 68,000 rounds per minute. German pilots tried to brake, turn, or dive away, but the physics were against them. The heavier P-47 could pull out of a dive faster, and its thick wing and massive structure handled the G-forces better. German pilots either blacked out or their aircraft tore apart under the stress. The Thunderbolts didn't dogfight or turn. Each pilot made a single high-speed pass, dove through, and used their remaining speed to zoom back to altitude. Zemke's calculations were perfect. The P-47's engine could regain 8,000 feet in 4 minutes, ready to dive again. The German formation scattered, unable to climb fast enough, dive fast enough, or turn with the Americans. By 10:03, 11 minutes after the attack began, the sky was empty of German fighters. Not one German fighter reached the B-17s, and 0 bombers were lost. The 56th Fighter Group reformed and continued the mission. The initial report seemed impossible. 21 confirmed German fighters destroyed, 0 American aircraft lost, and 0 pilots wounded. 8th Air Force headquarters demanded verification, sending investigators to interview every pilot and analyze all footage. Every claim checked out. The question remained, could Zemke's tactics work consistently? October 1943 was the 56th Fighter Group's proving ground. On October 8th, they destroyed 6 German fighters over Bremen. On October 10th, they claimed 9 confirmed kills over Munster. The bombers completed their missions without losing a single aircraft to fighter attack. But October 14th, the second Schweinfurt raid, was different. With 291 B-17s targeting critical ball bearing factories, the Luftwaffe committed over 300 fighters. Zemke was not flying that day. Though his deputy followed the diving tactics, the sheer scale of the German defense overwhelmed the escorts. 68 B-17s went down, the worst single-day loss of the war for the 8th Air Force. The 56th still claimed 16 German fighters, more than any other escort group, but it wasn't enough. The strategic bombing campaign looked finished, and American losses were deemed unsustainable. Some generals argued the P-47 was inadequate regardless of tactics, but Zemke was back in command for the next mission on October 20th. The group positioned at 32,000 feet, 10,000 feet above the bomber stream, ready to meet 73 experienced German contacts. The German formation leader, Major Wilhelm Ferdinand Galland, a veteran with 55 confirmed victories, began a classic bounce attack on the bombers at 10:45. Zemke's 52 Thunderbolts hit the Galland group from above and behind at 470 miles per hour. The German pilots never saw them coming. The combat lasted 7 minutes, with 17 German fighters destroyed. Major Galland did not survive. The Luftwaffe had lost one of its most experienced leaders in a battle that lasted less time than it takes to boil water. By the end of October, the 56th Fighter Group had 39 confirmed German aircraft destroyed for the month, becoming the highest-scoring fighter group in the 8th Air Force. Luftwaffe intelligence began tracking the new threat, calling it the Amerikanische Taktik, the American diving tactic, for which they had no counter. German commanders held emergency conferences. Their traditional intercept tactics, which had dominated European skies for 4 years, were no longer working. They realized the P-47 pilots were ignoring the B-17s and hunting fighters. German controllers tried to force the American escorts to split their forces by sending formations at different altitudes. Zemke countered by positioning his squadrons in vertical layers, high, middle, and low, ensuring every P-47 maintained enough altitude advantage for an attack. On November 5th, his group intercepted 3 coordinated German formations before they reached firing range, destroying 14 German fighters, with 0 bombers lost to fighters. The Luftwaffe began avoiding areas where the 56th operated.
Recognizing that other P-47 groups were not achieving the same results, General Ira Eaker ordered Zemke to brief all P-47 groups on his tactics. On December 8, 1943, Zemke spent 4 hours explaining the mathematics. The P-47 couldn't turn, accept it, use altitude to convert height to speed, hit fast, disengage fast, climb back up, and never get slow or turn. He was telling commanders that everything they knew was wrong for the Thunderbolt. They had to change the doctrine. The mission to Osnabrück on December 22nd showed the tactic's limitations. German ambush from cloud layers eliminated the altitude advantage, resulting in 1 P-47 lost. But clear weather dominated through January and February 1944, perfect for high-altitude operations. Big Week was coming, 6 consecutive days of maximum effort raids against German aircraft factories. The 56th's mission assignments included a target no American fighter had ever reached, Berlin. Republic Aviation engineers had delivered modified external fuel tanks, increasing the P-47's total fuel capacity to 605 gallons and extending its combat radius from 230 to 425 miles, bringing Berlin within range. A fully fueled P-47 weighed 9 tons at takeoff, making it slow and vulnerable. Zemke's solution? Take off with full fuel, climb slowly over England, burn off the external fuel first, and drop the empty tanks over Holland just before entering enemy territory. This allowed the P-47s to cross the coast at combat weight with full internal fuel. Big Week began on February 20th. The 56th's 54 P-47s took off at 900 hours, climbing to 30,000 feet over the North Sea. Over Holland, 108 empty external tanks tumbled toward the farmland, and the P-47s were at combat weight. German radar scrabbled 190 fighters to intercept. The 56th dove, using the same high-speed attack and zoom climb recovery. However, the Luftwaffe had adapted, spreading out into small, difficult-to-intercept four-aircraft sections. The fight fragmented, with P-47 pilots often alone and outnumbered. Nevertheless, German pilots who tried to turn with the P-47s died. The Thunderbolt's power-to-weight ratio at combat speed exceeded anything the Luftwaffe could match. The bomber stream reached Leipzig at 12:30. 21 B-17s went down over the target, but all to flak, not fighters. The Luftwaffe never got through. The seemingly impossible mission to Berlin was scheduled for March 6, 1944. At 510 miles from the English coast, it was the deepest penetration ever attempted by American fighters. Zemke briefed his pilots. The capital had never been reached by escort fighters, and previous raids had suffered massive bomber losses to unopposed Luftwaffe attacks. The 56th Fighter Group crossed into Berlin airspace at 11:22. Zemke spotted the German formations, over 70 mixed Focke-Wulf and Messerschmitts at 28,000 feet. The P-47s dove from 33,000 feet. The initial pass destroyed 6 fighters in 11 seconds. The combat moved west, with the P-47s staying with the Germans, using diving attacks, zoom climbs, and no-turning engagements. The bombers reached the target at 11:50. 11 B-17s went down to flak, but not one fell to German fighters during the bomb run. The escorts had held the Luftwaffe away. 18 German fighters were confirmed destroyed over Berlin. American fighters had reached Berlin, protected the bombers, and won the air war over the German capital. Zemke received the Distinguished Service Cross for turning the P-47 from a liability to the 8th Air Force's most successful fighter. 3 months later, the 56th prepared for Operation Overlord, the Normandy invasion. D-Day required absolute air superiority. The 56th's mission was to sweep ahead of the bombers and destroy German fighters before they reached the invasion zones. On June 6th, the 56th First Wave swept the French coast. The sky over Normandy was empty of German aircraft. The Luftwaffe had pulled back inland. The 56th went to them, attacking an airfield near Eu during the German takeoff sequence. The attack destroyed 9 Focke-Wulfs on the ground and shot down 4 more during takeoff. Not one reached the invasion beaches. By sunset on D-Day, the 56th had flown 97 sorties and claimed 23 German aircraft destroyed, 15 on the ground, and 0 American losses. Zemke transferred to the 479th Fighter Group in August 1944. His time with the 56th was over, but Lieutenant Colonel David Schilling assumed command, and the group's performance never declined. Zemke's tactics had become doctrine. When the Air Force compiled the final statistics, the 56th Fighter Group's record was undeniable. 677.5 German aircraft destroyed in air-to-air combat, the highest aerial victory total of any fighter group in the 8th Air Force. The P-47 Thunderbolt, called too heavy for combat by German pilots, had destroyed more German Luftwaffe fighters than any other American aircraft. This was not because the airframe changed, but because the tactics changed. Zemke's diving attacks, altitude discipline, and refusal to dogfight transformed the strategic bombing campaign, made D-Day possible, and won the air war over Europe. The entire shift started with one realization: the P-47 couldn't turn, so stop trying to make it turn. The 56th Fighter Group produced 39 fighter aces, more than any other 8th Air Force fighter group. They were disciplined tacticians who understood physics, refused to fight the enemy's fight, and forced the Luftwaffe to fight theirs. By April 1945, other P-47 groups had adopted variations of Zemke's tactics. Combined P-47 Thunderbolt groups destroyed over 2,000 German aircraft in air-to-air combat, making the supposedly obsolete fighter the most successful American aircraft in the European theater. Bomber losses declined from 20% per mission in 1943 to less than 2% by 1945. The strategic bombing campaign succeeded because fighters like the P-47 made it succeed. Zemke's mathematical approach to aerial combat influenced fighter tactics for the next 30 years, with his principles of height advantage, speed advantage, and boom and zoom remaining valid even as aircraft speeds doubled and tripled.